Okay, so in class we've discussed many of the external influences that can impact consumers' decision making, so those that are outside the control of the individual, so things like people's culture, marketing and advertising, so advertising with that idea of trying to establish brand loyalty, and therefore that is aiming to try and decrease the price elasticity of demand for products so that consumers are more willing to pay higher prices. Government laws and policies, so we've talked about products that have both positive and negative externalities and how the government promotes goods with positive externalities through subsidising those products and tries to prevent goods with negative externalities through things like taxing and banning certain products. What we're going to talk about in this video is some of the internal influence on consumer decision making. So some of the personal internal factors that affect the choices that we make and our behaviour. So things like people's personality types, their ethics and the habits and so on and so forth. So first of all, what we're going to look at first is personality. So when we're talking about personality, we're talking about the combination of attributes, motives, values, and behaviours that people have. So personality can have a big influence on how consumers behave and the choices that they make. So some consumers, for example, place a big priority on their social status or their position relative to others in society. So what I mean by that is they want to signal their status by purchasing what we call these Veblen goods, so that they can signal to each other that they are wealthy and that they basically to signal their social status to others. So one type of personality is those that people that like to signal their wealth by purchasing these Veblen goods. So one type of personality characteristic is what we call status seekers. So status seekers are those who gain satisfaction from being seen as consuming certain types of products, or what we call conspicuous consumption. Consumption that basically signals to others our wealth and our socio-economic status. So for certain products, what we call Veblen goods, basically these are goods that signal citizens' high standing in society. And they're what we call contra to the laws of demand, which basically means that the demand for these Veblen goods increases as the price increases. Because when the price increases, that sends a signal to consumers that these goods are, that are in higher standing, are valuable, are going to signal to their wealth to others, and therefore they're more likely to buy them at a higher price. So status seekers are those who get satisfaction from consuming goods that signal their wealth. And often these Veblen goods are contra to the law of demand, because high net worth individuals demand these in greater quantities when the price goes up, because they basically have what we call snob value or signal their wealth. Another type of personality characteristic is what we call the present bias, which basically means that people overvalue the present and undervalue the future. And that explains a lot of things, like why people overeat and spend too much on credit cards, and sometimes it explains problem gambling or spending all your money now that you don't have enough savings for retirement. So the reason that people can have this present bias is for two reasons. One, they can have overconfidence, so they can be overconfident in their ability to pay back mortgages, in their future income, in basically their future financial status. And secondly is procrastination, where people often put off making important decisions for a long period of time. So there's a big link between overconfidence and the present bias, in that we often overvalue the present, but partly because we're confident in our ability to pay back loans in the future, or our financial status in the future. So basically what businesses do is they try and exploit this overconfidence or this present bias, and some examples of that are things like gym memberships. They basically we know we buy gym memberships, and then over a long period of time a lot of clients won't go to the gym. Mortgages often offer these honeymoon rates, which basically makes it easier for people to pay back their mortgages at the start of their loan, but then the rates continue to increase as time goes by. But people just believe they're going to be able to pay them off because they have this overconfidence bias in the future. So for example, with the GFC, a lot of mortgages came with these special discounted rates initially, or these honeymoon or teaser rates. And then basically that fueled demand for housing, so the housing prices increased because there was so much demand for housing. So subprime borrowers were offered these ninja loans at really low interest rates. And basically what happened is over time these interest rates then started to increase. So as the interest rates started to increase, once the honeymoon period was over, many consumers defaulted on their mortgages. And as you know, that led to the bank seizing properties, them foreclosing on mortgages, and there was this massive oversupply of housing, which triggered the whole collapse of the housing market. So basically what you need to be able to explain is how the present bias and overconfidence accounted for this GFC. So there was too much borrowing initially, with these honeymoon teaser rates because those with mortgages were overconfident in their ability to pay it back in the future, but then when they couldn't pay it back, they foreclosed on their mortgages. There was this massive increase in the supply of housing, and many banks, along with investors who financed these loans, faced financial ruin as they were unable to recover the money they had originally loaned. Hence, we can see that overconfidence and a lack of self-control by consumers and the exploitation of this by business can have significant impacts on economic decision-making. So the overconfidence bias and the present bias can make us to make suboptimal decisions, which includes buying gym memberships, buying mortgages with honeymoon rates, and so on and so forth. Other examples of internal influences besides personality. So you need to know what personality means, you need to know what Veblen goods are, what conspicuous consumption is, the link between the present bias and overconfidence, and other internal influences are things like ethics. So the moral principles that guide a person's behaviour. So an ethical person will generally act in a manner that is considered acceptable and highly regarded by society. So they're more likely to purchase fair trade goods. They're likely to might be less likely to buy products like Nike that have a bit of a reputation for exploiting workers, and they're more likely to buy goods from areas where they know that the workers have been treated fairly. They're not. Perhaps there might be issues with sustainability. So people are consumers, and ethical consideration influences their preferences and ultimately the choices they make. So ethics, the moral principles that guide a person's behaviour. And then we have things like habit that also influences our purchasing power. So consumers often regularly purchase certain types of goods and services with very little cognitive effort, so they're unlikely to really sort of overanalyze their purchasing decisions. Because we're creatures of habits, we continue to purchase things over and over again, often when they're sometimes not even in our best interests. This may be because of positive experiences in the past. It's convenient to continually purchase these products, family and peers, geographical regions, product availability, or strategies used by businesses. So it's important to recognise that habits can have a big influence on our decision making and what purchasing decisions we make as well as ethics, as well as our personality type, which is influenced by whether we're status seekers, as well as the fact that we have the overconfidence and the present bias. Thank you.